mom's name is Sophia, and from the home of Donna, that was her maiden name. Jaja, or my father, is Stanisław Dabrowski, and he is one of like five children. So both of them grew up during World War II. Um, Basically, Babcha has probably like a third grade education, and Jaja, or my father, probably stopped going to school in second grade. It was because of the war that was going on in Poland, where schools were closed, and they were not able to attend them.
So like how? So obviously the war was World War II, right?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yes, World War II.
So in what other ways do you think that they were affected by the war, besides schooling and stuff like that? Did you ever think that that limited them in some way, or there were other limitations?
They were both from farming communities. They were both from villages. My mother's father, my grandfather, was a mayor of a village, and he was very political and tried to help what was going on during World War II. Um, Jaja, or my father, basically was young, and he was just a regular farmer. What had happened during World War II is that Germany would not allow the Polish people to stay in their own villages or in their own communities. So basically, in addition to schools not being closed, they were forced to leave where they were born. So that the whole premise of it was the fact that you really couldn't set up like communities and potentially rebel against the occupation. So they felt that by pushing everybody around the whole countryside, they would basically they would lose hope and just kind of go with the flow, so to speak. My grandfather, his name was Jacob, and Jacob Dovnad. And what he was trying to do is he had seen what was happening with the Jewish population and how they were um, just cut. They in Grajevo, which is a town very close to where we were born, was like a crossroads of merchants. So there was a large Jewish population that had lived there, because basically in Poland, um, in times of nobility, they the Polish nobles felt that handling any type of currency or money was beneath them. So there was a strong influence of Polish Jews who had really handled their currency and had traded, became merchants. And where we lived, which was in the northeast part of Poland, it kind of became like a crossroads of between Białorusia, which is White Russia or Russia now, and heading through Poland to get through to Germany. So my grandfather actually tried to save some of the Jewish people from going to different concentration camps and stuff. So my mom is very proud of that, and she tells stories about how he was almost shot in front of the family because he crossed the road to get water for them. So he's definitely a hero in her eyes, as well as I come to learn more about him. Definitely someone you would want to emulate.
So definitely, so the Nazis knew that he was like hiding Jews and stuff like that, or
He
was
wasn't
he?
hiding Jews, he was helping them. He was trying to sustain them, so he never hid them from the stories that I had gotten. But because he was of a political power, he tried to protect them. Jaja tells a story, my father tells a story about how his father took his family, including Jaja, and actually buried them in a forest, and put like a something over them, because there was such war going on, and families were being shot to death for no good reason, that if his father didn't come back, they would have basically suffocated eventually. So he tells about stories like that. But he was a young boy. He wasn't of fighting age at that time. My babcha, or my
You can
mother's
use Babcha and
brothers.
Jaja at this
Babcia
point.
Judge is like, I'm sorry, the grandma and grandpa in Polish, and that's from your side. But a lot of them went to the war and tried to fight, Germany, and then also Russia, and a lot of my Babcia's brothers never came back home. I have an older brother, his
Mm.
name is Ben, and I have a sister, and her name is Helene. So there was three of us.
So growing up, did you think that your parents' stories and their experiences definitely shaped how you were raised?
No, because at that, I guess in a way, I'll say that maybe because of the fact that it was basic survival. We were on a village, and we lived on a farm, and we lived in a 2.5 room home with no running water and no electricity. There was a kitchen with a big stove in the center of it, and just like a sitting area where there was a big radio, and we used to listen to Free Europe and think and dream about America. There was one bedroom where all of us slept, and there was a half a room with where Jaja's parents were. The way that the villages, the way that the farms worked was our home was here, and our property had a well. So a lot of the neighboring, our neighbors would come and draw from that well when their well went dry. So it was a very deep well. And then behind us was another family, so that the idea was that you kind of butted back and forth, and your land went out in front of you, or behind you, so that you had some support just in case you ever needed it in terms of like fires or storms or whatever. But we always dreamed about America. Um, Babcha's sister, Stefania, had married someone whose brother was here in this country, and then Uncle Stanley, and they left for America at the time that I was born. So
And when were you born?
I was born. Do I have to tell you exactly?
Yeah,
It
you
was
do.
February 7th, 1960. Is my.
It's okay. You can do the math later.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then never mind, I won't say. But when they already had gone to Poland before I was born, so Aunt Steffi never met
To
me.
America, you mean?
To America, I'm sorry.
That's not Poland.
Yes, Aunt Steffi never met me, but she was always, her and Babcha were very, very close. They were the only sisters. They had all brothers, and the one brother also had a farm, but the other two brothers had died during the war.
And then they went to school.
Yeah, Aunt Helen and Uncle Benny did go to school.
So like what up until before you left, like what was the equivalency of education you think?
Well, Aunt Helen was in fourth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and Uncle Benny was in sixth.
Do you think the education was equal to what they got in America, or was there discrepancies?
Yeah, I really can't say because it was basically you went to a school that was for your village. There wasn't really like you were poor, and therefore in Poland at that time, you really didn't like have the higher type of education that you would here. Everyone's treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
It was the basics of reading, writing, and math.
In Polish?
In Polish.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you didn't have you didn't even dream about going on to college if you lived on a farm. I think Babcha was the one that really, really instilled in Aunt Helen the love of books. Because Babcha, even though she only had a third grade education, she still read
Mm-hmm.
a lot. She used to read to us. And Uncle Benny had a talent for math. So Babcha's hopes were, she really, really stressed education. And she did it even when we came to this country. She didn't understand the language, but she would sit with us and just be there for us in case, I don't know why, but because she couldn't understand what was going on, but
Right.
she just enforced that on us. I really don't remember because I was really little. I just remember
How
that
old were you?
I was 6 years old when I came. We came here on March 4th, 1966.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the preparation for it. I can tell you, going back to your original question about farm life, it was very difficult, but Jaja was very proud of his horses. And when Babcha was sick, he actually sold one of the horse's tails. Babcha was very, very sick after she had me, and she almost died. And
Do you know of what, or?
no, I don't remember. I just remember that the only reason why she survived is that Aunt Steffi sent through Germany. She sent antibiotics.
And that's
That
because of like just Poland didn't have antibiotics, or were there certain restrictions
we
that
lived
you had
in
to go
a
through?
farm. We lived in a farm community under the Soviet domain under communism, and very little was given. If, for example, if you went to a hospital, you had to bring your own linens. Your family had to come in and bring you food. There was no food service in the hospital. Under communism, there was food rationing, and that's why we were so lucky that we lived on a farm, because we grew our own food, or else we were able to sell products to buy our own food.
So do you remember coming over? Like, what was the process physically coming to America?
I remember being told we have to go to Warsaw, for pictures.
Which was how far away from your village?
It had to be at least like a 4 hour train ride, 3 or 4 hours. It was like a long.
So you had access to
trains.
transportation and stuff? It's not like olden horse and buggy?
Well, it was horse and buggy to get to the main town, which is Grajewo, and then from there we were able to take the train. And in Warsaw we were vaccinated. I actually look like I have like a tattoo on my arm from the vaccinations, because they were like really like they got you.
You want to show it later?
No, thank you.
All right, never mind.
And I just remember going to Warsaw and taking a lot of pictures, going through, because he had to go through like a physical almost. America didn't want anyone who was sick, so you basically had to substantiate that you were healthy enough to leave the country, and that's how you got your papers to leave.
So even with Babcia's sickness, she was able to get through?
Yes, but by that time she was pretty good, and she was able to get through. What really benefited us is that Aunt Steffi and Uncle Stosh never forgot about us. And I always tell a story around Christmas time, and I know you probably are tired of hearing it, but Aunt Steffi used to send us oranges around Christmas through Spain, through Valencia. And I'm a bit older now, and they were the best tasting oranges I've ever tasted in my life. Babcia would let us share one, like every once in a while, and she would use the skin of the oranges to actually create like grating stuff for cakes and stuff, like flavoring for cakes. But she would allow us at Christmas time to have our own orange, and that was like you're able to eat it all by yourself, and that was wonderful.
So you're in Warsaw, then what happened?
We were just in Warsaw for maybe a day or two. I don't think we came home, and actually very, very tired. And Babcia tells a story about how everybody went to bed, but I went with Jaja to help feed the cattle and the horses. She couldn't believe that I was still, had enough energy, because I was only 6 at the time. Before we left for America, there was a lot of preparation, okay, because all of a sudden you had a farm, a very active farm, that you had to sell your livestock. You had to, Babcia and Jaja had no idea what to expect when they came to this country. They had 3 children, so they sold whatever they could to basically, have some money, or to be able to kind of buy American dollars, usually on the black market, because it was American dollars were not really readily available in Poland at that time, and they were selling everything off. So one day we kind of like, I don't know, someone took us to Grajewo and we took a train. That's all I remember.
So what was like how many weeks do you think was it until the original trip to Warsaw and then the day you finally left?
About 3 months, I would say, in between, to get all of our paperwork and everything. Looking back on it now, it really helped the whole immigration, because remember, East Europeans were not really open. I guess the policy for East Europeans was not that open here in the United States.
Right.
After Kennedy's assassination, Lyndon B. Johnson pushed through the immigration bill of 1965. And when that happened is when they allowed for the quotas of immigrants to increase for Eastern Europe. So that's when Chacha Steffi, or Aunt Steffi, sponsored us as a family, which was very difficult, because usually you would get like one person or the other to come and then bring the family over.
Right.
But that time, because of the immigration bill that was passed, they did accept families to emigrate over to this country.
Your papers went through, you're ready to go. How'd you get over here?
We took a train to Bremerhaven, Germany. I don't remember the train ride at all. I just remember it was really tiring. And then we got to this, I don't remember how we got to a port, but I just remember we got onto a ship, And Babcha, during the years of like Germany and Russia going back and forth, she spoke a little bit of German,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to where we needed to be, and the ship was the Aunt Steffi had bought us a one-way passage for the family on the ship called the USS United States.
Which to
And
this day is where.
right now it's in South Philly, but that's a different story.
All right.
But
So
that was at that time the fastest ship that sailed the Atlantic from either England or Bremerhaven was Germany, England to America. It was the fastest ship at that time.
so fast as in how many days?
We left, I want to say, like the end of February, and we came to America on March 4th. So I would say maybe 4 days on the Atlantic, but it was not a good that was not a good trip.
So exactly, that was my next question. So what was your experience personally on the trip?
um, we were definitely out of our element. As a matter of fact, there's the picture that Katie will show you later about us trying to find where our room was as we were boarding the USS United States. Um, we were very much lost.
So what was this like? Describe the ship. Was it like a passenger ship or was it nice? Like
It
what
was
was it?
actually a very, very nice American-made passenger ship
Mm-hmm.
that had like different, levels of rooms and
So
things
it's like
like that.
Titanic almost.
Well, I'm not, I don't know. That I don't know, but basically because it was very low cost passage,
Right.
the dollar amount, so we
Mhm.
were like on the bottom decks, whatever. And once we found our room, we were in one room with bunk beds and stuff. We all got really seasick,
Right.
very, very seasick, to a point where we didn't even like try to make it out of the room because everybody was really bad. We had a steward that came and would bring us food.
Right.
So we never even went up into like the main. I don't remember going up into the main areas. I just remember being really, really sick,
And to
and
this
that's
day.
why I will not walk onto a dinghy, never mind a cruise ship. And I've not gotten that fear of the water out of my head.
So you get off the boat and what do you have, possession wise?
We get off the boat and there are 3 children and 2 suitcases.
Filled with what?
Just clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Babcha used to love to embroider, so inside the bag that she's carrying is they were afraid of like being confiscated, money being confiscated, stuff like that. So in my coat there was money that was sewn into my coat that I came off the ship with. There was money sewn in different parts of like the other people's coats, Aunt Helen's, Uncle Benny's, and then the basket that Bob's just carrying had her embroidery like threads. But I just remember they sat there and they rethreaded spools of thread because on the inside of that was money
Right.
because they had absolutely no idea what to expect
Mm-hmm.
coming over to this country.
That's insane, honestly.
Yeah, but you know what? But when you don't know anything, you just expect the worst.
So then you came over and like where'd you live? What was the living conditions? You guys had nothing, so
We came off the ship and we were very, very sick. And I think Chacha realized how bad we were.
mm-hmm.
She had hired someone because Uncle Stash did have a car, but obviously there was 5 of us, so they asked a friend to drive another car to pick us up from New York. And we went to Elizabeth, New Jersey, which was on Magnolia Street, which is a poor area of Elizabeth, New Jersey. And we pull up to this home, which is behind a storefront. There's a storefront with some sort of like, I don't know, just boarded up with newspapers is all I remember. And we go into the kitchen and Chacha was there. Chacha's friends had prepared like a feast for us, which was like Polish food and stuff that we knew like what the food was.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of like were just so tired and so like out of it. We did whatever we could, and then we were falling asleep. The kids were all falling asleep, and so Mom or Babcha asked Chacha like, where can we sleep? And she says, you don't understand. She says, this is your apartment.
Wow.
So we had our own apartment. We had the storefront, and then was like a living room where Uncle Benny slept, and then there was another bedroom with Babcia and Jaja, and then it was Aunt Helen and I having a room, and then the kitchen. And we had a television set that was black and white. That was like incredible. That was absolutely incredible. One of the person who owned the house, though, we had to share a bathroom with her.
Right.
And thinking about it now would be like really gross, but when you didn't have a bathroom to begin with, it was pretty good. But but that was the only thing I remember from that point of view. But that was in March of 1966. So Aunt Helen and I started kindergarten, and Aunt Helen and Uncle Benny started St. Edward's School on 3rd Street, Elizabeth, and it was taught by Felician nuns, and they also spoke Polish. So they were enrolled in school, and then I was enrolled in kindergarten.
So, what was your schooling experience? Did you was it traumatic in any ways, or was it tough, or since you never
I
had?
used to have this boy who always squeezed my hand that I couldn't communicate to the teacher that he would make me cry. And I'll show you my kindergarten picture.
So they had, was it almost like an ESL program, or were you just thrown into a pot full of kids that knew how to speak English and knew? So how did you finally catch up to them?
Kindergarten was like just playtime in Catholic school. It wasn't really. I don't remember really learning much in kindergarten. Aunt Helen's teacher was a Felician sister who was bilingual, Polish and English, so she had gotten more help. And Uncle Benny was in 6th grade, and the teacher also knew Polish. So I mean, they just kind of like caught up with it. That summer, they had to go for ESL classes at the public school.
Right.
Babcia and Jaja both started working in factories. Jaja started working as a welder, or a helper to a welder, and then later on he picked up welding. Babcia started working at a factory that I keep telling you the story that made cookies. It was in Elizabeth, and it was called Delicia, I think. I forgot what the name was. It meant delicious or something. But she always tells the story that you have to be careful what you wish for. Because as a young girl and during the war, she always wanted to have enough of chocolate to eat. The chocolate was very, very scarce during World War II, and it had to be a really special occasion for anyone to get a bar of chocolate. And as a young girl, I guess she got it every once in a while, and she developed a sweet tooth.
Right.
So all she ever wanted in life was to eat enough of chocolate. Okay, and her first job coming to this country was working in a cookie factory, melting chocolate that poured over wafers.
So it kind of ruined chocolate for her, did it?
Oh my goodness! When it's like that summer, I remember it being like 120 degrees, and we would actually go pick her up with my Uncle Stash from work, and she would just come out, and she would be drenched in sweat from this chocolate. But she says, always be careful what you wish for, because the good Lord gave her enough chocolate to last her a lifetime.
So they made their living that way. Was there any other jobs that they got over the years, or were your parents always a welder and a chocolatier?
Actually, Bob, I have to tell you how strong-willed Babcia is. At that time, in 1966, women earned less money than men, even if they were doing equal jobs.
Right.
So one of the ladies that she worked with told her about this can company, George Milton Can Company, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, that were going to hire women. There were no women in the factory at that time, and she decided to go and apply. So you can honestly say, okay, that Babcia was the first woman in an all-male can company, and she got in, and she was one of like 5 or 6 initially, and she had started on the assembly lines, and eventually when she retired, she was an inspector of cans. When we first came, we lived on Magnolia Street,
Right.
and I had never. This is the riots of 1966 and 67. So basically, what was happening was they had racial riots in this country, and we lived in Elizabeth, and then Babcia and Uncle Stash and Aunt Steffi bought a house in North Elizabeth, which was about a mile away from Newark, and Newark was burning. So we came here in March, and they bought a house, I want to say, in that fall, probably that fall of 1966, and they asked us to move in with them. We had a second floor of their two-family home, and we were about a mile away from Newark, New Jersey. And the sirens, the firemen, the trucks, the police, that the summer of 1967, probably 67, 68, it was just tremendous. I would say 67, as it was just, Newark was always burning,
Mhm.
and we were very, very close to Newark. And I guess it was more Babcha's idea for my, instead of Jaja's, to come here, because Jaja loved his farm and loved his horses. So I just remember the two of them saying, we sold everything that we had to come here, and look where we are. We're going to die. Because it was just such a very tumultuous time.
Right.
And Elizabeth schools were also, once Uncle Benny left 8th grade, he went to public high school, the public middle school and then high school. And he's constantly getting beat up. He got the jacket stolen. They would steal his lunch money, gangs, and stuff like that. It was very, very, you were afraid to go to school.
Mhm.
So it was just such a tremendous, when you think back as to what it was in this country, having somebody come from another country to see what's going on, you have to go, step back and say, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
But Babcha would not let us not stop learning.
Mhm.
She pushed education on us. She pushed, good grades. We got involved with Polish Girl Scouts, and Helen and I and all. Uncle Benny played soccer, for the middle schools and the high schools and stuff, so he was involved with that.
Right.
So it was definitely a difference, but we made it happen.
So then, did you eventually made it out of Elizabeth and?
We actually, after living with Uncle Stasha and Aunt Steffi, my parents, Babs and Jaja, bought a two-family house right by Newark Airport.
Mhm.
And there, eventually when I finished 8th grade at St. Adalbert's, Aunt Helen convinced Babs and Jaja that I shouldn't go into the public schools.
Mhm.
And they didn't have the money to send me to a Catholic high school, so we moved out and we moved to Clark, New Jersey.
And where did you go to high school?
I went to Arthur L. Johnson Regional High School in Clark, New Jersey.
And so that was your first experience. Now, not only the awkward transition from middle school to high school, but from Catholic school to public school.
It was a tremendous, tremendous change, because
On top of being in a new town.
right, what happened in Catholic elementary school in those days is that they were very restricted as to what type of books we had. I mean, we didn't have gym class. We kind of walked around the block. There wasn't a concerted, actual gym class where you played games and things like that. We had one microscope for the whole class. And I came into 9th grade in freshman biology, and everybody knew how to use a microscope, and I just kind of looked, saying, I can do that too. So it was a big, big change.
And were you very successful, or how was your high school experience?
My high school experience in freshman year was challenging, but at the same time, it was just, I felt I had to succeed. I felt like my parents had given me this opportunity and sacrificed so much that I had to do well. So I did.
So did they put pressure on you, or did you almost put the pressure on yourself? That the fact that did they literally tell you, like, we came to this country, blah blah blah, or did you
It was never
personally?
brought up to. It was always understood.
Right.
You have to understand that Babs and Jaja do not read or write English.
Mhm.
So Aunt Helen.
Even to this day.
Yeah.
So we'll backtrack a little bit. So how did that affect growing up? Also, how did you help them out? Since
We had to help them out because, for example, Aunt Helen, at the ripe old age of maybe 12 or 13, helped them buy a house.
right.
She ran their checkbook, and when she got married, and she was 19,
Yeah.
I took over, and I ran the household, and I ran the a checkbook.
So Uncle Benny was lazy, essentially.
No. I think it was, what happens is that in that whole tradition, the women took care of things.
Right.
The men didn't. It was definitely, that's why sometimes I look back and I say, okay, I always felt like I always had to prove something to Babcia and Jaja, that, I wanted to be appreciative of the opportunity that they had given us.
Right.
And that kind of like came to some, to I guess, to a situation where in high school, as you get comfortable, you also develop a lot of attitude with some hormonal changes kicking in. And I was in senior year in high school. I had gotten to a college that I wanted to go to, and Jaja said no, that he wasn't going to
What
let
was the
me.
college?
I got accepted to Georgetown
Right.
in a full academic scholarship, and
Which to this day is an impressive feat.
well, it was an immigrant, so maybe it was that had to do a lot with the application because of the fact that I was very interested in history.
Right.
I was a member of the junior historians and student council, and I dug out, I did grave rubbings because I loved history. I love American history, and just something that I kind of like developed over time. There was a William Robinson Museum. It's now a museum. It's on Madison Hill Road in Clark, New Jersey, and we were allowed to dig up parts of their backyard for purposes of trying to find old artifacts and things like that. So anyway, I'm digressing. But we had, high school presented to me a new world,
Right.
New world of education, a new world of standards. The opportunities were there. I was chosen to be part of a leadership conference in my junior year to represent the school. That eventually changed my life because it just taught me that you can own a business and you can be a leader in business. Gave me the initiative to really strive hard,
right,
and to succeed.
So you didn't go to Georgetown. So what further education did you end up doing?
I ended up I commuted to Rutgers University because remember I had to be home, and but what had happened in my senior year in high school is I was a bit rebellious, and I was very mad at Babcia and Jaja, mostly Jaja, but whatever. And I said, well, I'll show you, because I started waitressing when I was 14, so I always had money in my pocket, and I started, working, and when I was able to drive, I actually held two jobs. When I was 17, Babcia and Jaja gave me a 1968 Catalina that was so long that if you made a hard left turn, the muffler would fall out. So after getting Jaja's welding gloves to put the muffler back in the trunk of the car, which at that time made a lot of sense, but the trunk of the car is like right over the gas tank, and I'm putting a hot muffler in it, but it never exploded, so I was okay. But only if you made a hard left would that happen, okay? You had to drive home without a muffler, which was really great when you wanted to sneak back in the house at 11:30 at night, but that's a different story. So when I was 17, I decided to work in the factory with Babcia.
The can company,
The can
right?
company.
Right.
So I lied about my age, and I said I was 18 because you had to be 18 to work in a factory. And that summer I worked with Babcia, and I waitressed at nights and weekends so I can get enough money to buy my own car.
And so you commuted to Rutgers, you graduated successfully. Where do you stand now in this world?
I am an owner of a small business.
What's it called?
It's called Pension Consultants Administrators. I was given the opportunity about 6 years ago to purchase another business called Client Financial Programs, and together we service about almost 450 clients. I have 6 employees working for me, and I'm striving to give my children a college education before I retire.
So you obviously have a family. So what's your family?
My family is my lovely husband Jim, okay, who I've met in 1981, and we got married in '84. So we're going to be married 29 years this April. He is the American boy that Jaja called to say, because I am the only one out of my brother and sister who married an American. So no comment on that one. And my oldest son is Michael. My middle son is Christopher, and I have a lovely, lovely daughter. Her name is Catherine Grace.
Thank you. So you have a successful family, successful business, successful education. If given the opportunity to go back to Poland, would you go back?
I would go back to visit. You really can't go after knowing all that you know here. You really can't go back in time. I was given the opportunity in 1978 after I graduated high school. As I mentioned, I was having a difficult situation with my parents at the time, and I was very upset with them. And I basically, was mad at the fact that they wouldn't allow me to go study in Washington and at Georgetown. So I was registered to go to Rutgers, and I was a commuter, which I was okay with. But that summer they gave me a trip to Poland, and I was stopped at the airport because I had a Cosmopolitan magazine that I was reading on the plane, and then they accused me of bringing in pornography. And that was really scary because you don't realize your freedoms until you look at somebody who has a whole lot more control than you do in a foreign country. The airport was scary because there was all these like young people walking around with submachine guns because this was a communist state, and we were at that time still Polish citizens. We were not American citizens at that time because Jaja felt that one of these days he was going to go back to Poland, so he didn't want to give up his citizenship. Um, anyway, I went back and I saw the farm that I grew up on. I saw the boy that I used to play hide go seek with, and I was at that time 18 years old, and he was about 19 or 20, was married and sleeping on a straw mattress with a child, and his wife pregnant with another one. And I saw myself in that whole situation, and I was ever so grateful that we were able to come to this country and where I was when I got back from that summer vacation. But that also taught me that you have to be aware of where you came from because it's made you the person that you are. And I got very active with Polish organizations after that trip to Poland. So in 78, 79, 80, when I was in college, there was something called Solidarity that came into existence in Gdańsk, and we actually ran fundraisers to help fund them and their cause at that time. So that whole trip had really taught me, has given me such a strong commitment to help others, as well as never really forget where you came from.
So, do you maintain your Polish culture, do you think?
Well, it's kind of difficult because I did marry that American, as I said. But I have been active with Polish organizations. I've been on the board of trustees of the Polish Culture Foundation here in Clark. As a matter of fact, we actually had helped renovate the building that they currently are in. And so I try to do what I can with the resources that I have. After you guys were born, I was very active with other nonprofit organizations. I kind of didn't do as much as what I could for the Polish Culture Foundation, so I gave up my trusteeship, but I've never forgotten them.
So, what do you think about your children? Do you think they embody the Polish spirit that you hope that they do?
I want to say yes, because I hope I've given you the opportunity to realize that anything is possible with hard work, with a lot of perseverance, and I think we all should be grateful to Aunt Stephanie and Uncle Stash who have brought us to this country, to Babci and Jaja who have instilled in us the opportunity to succeed and given us the tools to do it. And I feel that anyone and everyone is capable to fulfill their dreams.
So, here's a stereotypical question. So, after quote unquote living the American dream and coming from Europe and dreaming about it, what's your definition of it?
The American dream to me is a sense of hope, that through hard work and dedication and perseverance, you can do and be whatever you want to be. No holds barred.
So, do you think your definition is different from, say, your sister's or your brother's definition or another immigrant, given
No,
their
because
experiences?
we know what we came from. We know what we left behind. We've seen the opportunities that this country has given to plain old people, to individuals who are not special, but through hard work and perseverance, you can do whatever you want. And I think that's what the whole draw is, to come to this country, to have a freedoms to be able to do what you want to do.